Hi guys, welcome to my podcast dedicated to the spread of the board gaming. Obviously guys, there are also the videos on YouTube to talk about our beloved hobby, but a video sometimes requires a lot of time, whereas the audio podcast can be created in short without a big effort. So I have decided to start a series of podcasts dedicated to our beloved hobby, to our beloved discipline, and I want to begin with a word game that I was playing just last week. I'm speaking of Chariot, a word game published by SPI in 1975, and I'm going to highlight the analogies that I found between Chariot and, relatively modern SPQR, the second word game of the series Great Battles of History, a word game designed by two legends of our hobby. I'm speaking about Mark Herman and Richard Berg. Well, what about Chariot? At first, Chariot is a game that belongs to the Prestag series, a famous series that was the final result of the several games and playing system that SPI dedicated to the ancient periods. Prestax was a series made of Chariot, Spartan, Legion, Viking, and Yeoman. And in my point of view, Chariot is the best one. Chariot is not only about the scenario Megiddo that I'm going to illustrate, but in the game Chariot, designed by John Young, graphics are by the unforgettable Redmond Simonsen. Well, in Chariot you can find several scenarios that were already present in an old strategy and tactics issue, Armageddon, strategy and tactics number 34, if I will remember, and you can simulate beyond Megiddo a basic scenario about Rome, the Delta, Babylon, then you have Sinai, Kadesh, Karkar, Tabal, and Thimbra. So you find several scenarios. In my point of view, the best one probably is, Kadesh, or Kadesh, sorry for the pronunciation, but since I'm trying to write a history about, or better, I'm trying to find the best word games that simulate better important battles of the past. Well, I have decided to deploy Megiddo and to play it. I have also made some changes to make it a little more real. What about Megiddo? What about Chariot? First of all, I repeat, Chariot has many basic rules that you can find also in the word game SPQR. For example, please remember that you have the unit capability chart. Actually, you have to, when there is the melee, you have to determine the strength of each unit. For example, when you have the light units that are attacking medium and heavy infantry, well, the strength changes, and this determines a different melee, different odds. So guys, this unit capability chart is very similar to the capability chart that you find in SPQR. So I think that there is a sort of indirect or direct influence coming from this chart. Also, please don't forget, if you can browse the manual, that you find, for example, the movement very, very, very similar to what you find in SPQR. You had the fire combat and a table about the range effects, and you find the same also in SPQR. I don't want to say that Hermann and Berg copied Chariot, but obviously I think that they found their inspirations just in this plane system. Well, let's talk about the historical event. And what about? Well, we have two protagonists. I'm speaking about Thutmose or Thutmosis III and the king of Kadesh. The location of the battle is in Syria, precisely in Megiddo. Megiddo was the city that was to be seized if people wanted to reach the northern part of the Middle East. Who won? Well, obviously, the more organized Egyptian army could win. Please remember that Thutmose was considered the Napoleon of Egypt. The force he can count on, well, was about 10,000 men and also 1,000 chariots. And, well, please remember that also the Syrian army had a similar force, but they weren't so organized. So Thutmose also, because of a gamble that he tried, well, actually he surprised the Syrian army by passing through I don't remember. Yes, Aruna. Well, one of the three roads that led to Megiddo, and Aruna was the most difficult pass, and Thutmose decided to pass through this Aruna, and obviously he surprised the Syrian army. He, or better, the Egyptian army didn't encounter a powerful force. There was only a covering force, and the Egyptian army quickly drove away the opponent. Please remember that it wasn't a definitive battle. Why? Because after having completed on the battlefield the Syrian army, well, the Egyptians wasted a lot of time in looting the enemy camp, and this waste of time allowed the Syrian army to find shelter in the fortified city of Megiddo. Anyway, after, if I remember, after 6 months, well, the Syrian army was obliged to surrender. Please remember that Megiddo is the first recorded battle in detail, and it's the most important, the first great battle of the Bronze Age. If you want to play the battle, well, you can choose among 3 main word games. I have already cited Armageddon, well, the old strategy and tactics issue number 34. The little better Chariot that I strongly suggest, and please don't forget the modern Chariots of Fire that belongs to the Great Battles of series published by GMT. But, well, I'm using Chariots of Fire to simulate Kadesh, and I have preferred using Chariot to represent, to deal with Megiddo. Well, actually, I found that the deployment suggested by the designer in the original booklet is not so right. Why? Because there are some differences. Above all, if you are going to read the book 100 Decisive Battles written by Paul K. Davies, and well, you should change something by deploying the Egyptian army, well, a little better. You have to change something about the areas, and you have to do the same as regards the Syrian army. Anyway, these changes are not so big, so you can do that easily. I uploaded some pictures about this new deployment just on the SPI group, and I invite you to check it out. Well, guys, and so Chariot to simulate Megiddo. In the next podcast, I'm going to give you some information about Kadesh or Kadesh. Well, I have to check the pronunciation, and I'm going to use I repeat the game Chariots of Fire, published recently, well, about 9 years ago, published recently by GMT. Well, and guys, I repeat, if you have the chance to find and to buy Chariot, well, please don't miss it. Guys, well, we are at the end of this first podcast dedicated to the spread of wargaming. I hope to start a new podcast, not tomorrow, but on Wednesday. And, I hope to enlarge my audience. Well, that's all for the moment, and bye.